welcoming into the show Owen Shroyer, host of the InfoWars War Room. Thanks so much, Owen, for coming on today.
Well, it's an honor to be here with a fellow St. Louisan. It's always nice to see St. Louisans making an impact in the media.
I love it. We have cranked out so many greats here. We have Dana Lash and so many others that have now become prominent figures, and it's just great to have you. So let's start off by just your thoughts on the Lakewood shooting. Lakewood Church had a mass shooter come in. The person was instantly neutralized and didn't get a chance to carry out their evil plans. But now we've learned that it was a woman who had lived as a man for a significant period of time. She also took her 7-year-old child with her on this crime spree. What do you think of the media coverage of all of this?
There's so many different angles. Like, for example, even the Houston police during their press conference can't be honest about the situation and say that it was a man. They just won't do it. They have to say it's a woman because that's the political correct thing to do. What I find amazing is whenever we have shootings like this, usually the mainstream media likes to make it their top story for 48 hours minimum. They usually like to make it their top story, and we know that's because they have a gun grabbing agenda. They have an anti-Second Amendment agenda. But with these most recent shootings, I believe it's 6 of them now, the 6 most recent shootings happening at schools and churches were all being committed by a trans individual or a non-binary individual, whatever it is that falls under the LGBTQ plus ideology, which is a left-wing ideology. And so now all of a sudden the mainstream media has lost their interest in these stories and they don't want to cover them and they don't want to gun grab over them. Isn't that amazing? I think it's quite an admission of guilt. I think it's quite an admission of the role that they're playing in this ideology that is now becoming violent and deadly. But the same old question remains, which is what pharmaceutical drugs was this individual on? I believe whether the individuals are trans or as they call cis, young, old, there always seems to be a pharmaceutical angle at play here as well. But the mainstream media never likes to talk about that either because most of their ads during the breaks are paid for by these same companies. So it's really a tragic thing. Clearly, this was a deranged individual. Clearly, the left-wing ideology of LGBTQ plus has some role to play in this. And luckily, there was somebody there with a gun. There was a good citizen, a good guy with a gun that stopped this thing before it got too violent. If the Democrats had their way, who knows how many people could have lost their lives that day.
And so, Owen, the thing you started out with is the thing that's driving me nutso, which is the fact that because they have been so prevalent with their, fake speak on whether or not this person was a man or a woman, that we actually have some disagreement all over the media over what they found. They found documents showing that it was a biological woman living as a man sometimes, but then we have also people saying, no, it was a man who lived as a woman sometimes. The 7-year-old child that was with this person was found to be their biological child by evidence that they found at the residence. So they're saying, no, it was a woman. And then others are saying, no, it was a man. It was their, still their biological child, but not by birth. Obviously, it was the father. So whatever the situation is, we know that the transgender movement has a role to play in the uptick in shootings. And they're the ones who, remember, they've blamed law-abiding citizens, the NRA, Trump, you, me, any person who owns a gun, has shot a gun, maybe just said the word gun. We're all responsible for the behavior of deranged lunatics. But now we see the gender affirming care movement directly implicated in the uptick in shootings across the country. And I don't see anybody giving any blame to that specific push, which comes solely from the Democrats.
Well, it's the same game, except now they're blaming Christianity or right wingers, and they're saying, oh, you won't accept this individual for what they claim to be, so it's your fault. And that was all over the social commentary in response to this story. I'm sure you're familiar with Libs of TikTok, who's now come out formally as Shia
Yep.
Rychick, and all she does is share their own videos. So you'll have trans individuals or teachers, young LGBTQ activists, and they'll post content onto the internet. And all this young lady does is she just takes that content and then shares it on her own platform that has millions of followers. And they say, oh, why are you doing this? You can't do this. It's your fault we're receiving hate. But it's just their own videos. And so it's this amazing like judo psychology that they're engaging in right now to say, well, yeah, even though it's our ideology that's causing this, we're still going to point the finger at you. We're still going to blame you because you won't accept our ideology. But even removing the issue of LGBTQ plus from this, think about how dangerous this is. Stacey. This is somebody saying, I'm allowed to lie, I'm allowed to deceive, I'm allowed to live a life that is not in reality. And then if you deny that, I'm justified turning to violence. I mean, even beyond the LGBTQ ideology of this, that is a dangerous precedent to set in culture, in civilization, in society. And it seems like that's what the left wants, whether it's the lies that led to the George Floyd riots, whether it's the lies about Donald Trump that led to all kinds of civil disturbances, whether it's the lies of LGBTQ plus that are now leading to violent crimes and shooters. It's all the same thing. Accept our lie or we're going to be violent. And when you don't accept it, we're going to justify it.
Yeah, and then of course the death of the little boy, obviously still in critical care. It's just it's such a tragedy that that child was even involved at all. Couldn't get a babysitter, couldn't drop the child off at one of those 24-hour daycare centers that are all over the place. So before we go here, Owen, we have just a couple minutes left. There's all this talk about replacing Biden, that the Democrats are feverishly working behind the scenes. They can't actually remove him now that he's won most of the delegates for their process. They can't remove him from the ballot. He's going to be the nominee, barring him actually saying I don't want to, and he'll never do that. Jill is too much in favor of continuing to live in the White House. So Michelle Obama keeps being brought up as the replacement. I don't think it's going to be her because she hated living in the White House. She hated being a part of that whole apparatus. But of course, for her husband, she did it for 8 years. But now that they own 5 mansions, beachfront property in Hawaii, and Martha's Vineyard, why would she step down from that to be the most hated woman in America? But yet people still keep bringing her up as the only viable option. Who do you think it's going to be when they replace him?
I
One
tend to
minute
agree
here.
with your analysis with Michelle Obama. I tend to agree with that. I think Gavin Newsom is actually a formidable and viable candidate. I can't stand the communist Democrats in California, but I think we do have to recognize that. You know, Kamala Harris has obviously kind of thrown her name out there. I think what's going to be real curious to watch, what I'm more interested in instead of who they're going to replace him with is what are the Democrats going to do? If their plan is actually to remove Joe Biden, which I still think is up in the air. I mean, they're still using Obama and Clinton to campaign for him. What type of evil deeds, evil policies are they going to execute in Joe Biden's final days as a lame duck president? That is my biggest concern right now because obviously he doesn't care about his legacy and neither do they.
You know what, Owen? We'll talk about this more. I'm going to be joining you on your program later on this week. So excited about that. War Room. I'm totally pumped. Thank you for joining me today, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right. We have more Stacey Washington now coming up. Stay right there.